Hey there, it's Olivia Savannah here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and today I'm here to give you part 2 of my September wrap-up. I read 21 books in the month of September, and I'll leave a link to part 1 down below, but we're going to be talking about the next round of books that I read. I'll have content warnings in the description box down below if that's something that might be useful to you, and without further ado, let's get to finishing off this wrap-up. So one of the books that I wanted to talk about was a reread for me, and I reread this on audiobook even though I read it physically for the first time, and that is The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. This is the first book in one of my favourite young adult dystopian sci-fi books of all time, series of all time I should say, and I reread this for the Not a Genre book club, which I was a guest for from Cara from Wild Book Garden, and I'll leave a link to the live show where we discussed this book for an hour down below. So in this book, what is unique about it is that it's set in a world where all the men have noise, and that means every thought that you ever have, every memory, everything is on the outside. Everyone can see your thoughts as they're happening in images around you and in words, and that's all on the outside. There is no privacy. We're following Todd, who is a young teenager just about to become a man, and he lives in Prentice Town where only men are left. But when a series of events happen, he has to escape the town, he has to flee from them as they're hunting him, and he discovers something while he's running, and that is a girl. And what is very significant about this girl is that she does not have any noise. So that's the premise of the story, and I'm not going to talk too long about this one because I have reviewed it on my channel before. I absolutely loved it, and I absolutely loved rereading it. As a reread, it's still a 5 stars, it's still a new favourite, but I guess it's an old favourite now. It is just such a good book for multiple reasons. One, Todd as a main character is just delightful to follow. He is going through a lot of turmoil, he's going through a lot as he goes through the series of events in this book. And one thing that he does constantly is unlearning. He has to unlearn everything he's been taught and told and just discover the world newly minted and fresh. And I just appreciate the concepts of this book and how well that unlearning element is done. And then we have, of course, Viola, who's a girl that he meets, and she has no noise, and the way that their relationship forms over the course of this book, how their friendship builds and how they interact with each other is just beautiful to see. I think it also talks a lot about toxic masculinity and also just gender roles and how women are perceived and how men are perceived, with an extra added element to the fact that women don't have noise and men have noise, and the ways in which you get to see this manifested in a variety of characters over their travels is just so interesting and really sinks deep into why toxic masculinity is so bad, why gender roles and norms that are assigned can be negative too. And I just love it. I think Patrick Ness was ahead of the curve in discussing a lot of really vital and important topics in this book in a way that young adults can digest. There were so many emotional moments that you're just internally screaming and internally crying throughout the whole course of reading this book, and I love that. I love that it was fast paced. I love that there was so much going on in terms of the plot. I love how many twists and turns there are, and even though this is essentially a travelling book where they need to get from point A to point B, it's never boring, it's never a dull moment. There's always something moving the characters or the plot or the themes ahead as you keep reading. There is a significant moment in this that's quite make or break for a lot of people, and it comes with a massive content warning. So when I say there are content warnings in the description box down below, I'll put this particular content warning at the forefront, the very first content warning there is, because I think it's one worth checking if you want to read this book. I just love it, and that's all I have to say. That's all I have to say. I've gushed about it enough. I also read a series up to the point of where it's been published. I know, check me, reading series. So the first one in the series, it's a romance series by the way, is You Had Me At Hola by Alexis, Daria, and then the second one is A Lot Like Adios by Alexis, Daria. Again, these are 2 romance books, and they are the kind of romance books where you've got a group of characters and you follow one character in this and the next character in this, and I presume you're going to follow the last one in the trio in the 3rd book that comes out, which I will not be reading. So I read You Had Me At Hola first. This one is about Jasmine. She is an actress, and her family don't really respect the fact that she does acting, even though she is quite successful. And she's always in the news for all the wrong reasons, for boy drama reasons and the like. And Ashton is also celebrity, also a film star, and he's really popular in telenovelas, and so they come together to do a telenovela Netflixy kind of combination, and while they're acting as love interests they might develop love for each other off screen. That's pretty much what this one is about. It's one of those romances that feel quite gentle to me in terms of it's quite straightforward, but it's a good time. I found it okay. I didn't love it, but I didn't dislike it either. I was just happy to blitz through it and read it. I read it in a single day and I had a nice enough time. It was all fun and games. So what I liked about this one is I did like Jasmine and Ashton. I think they were nice characters. I think they had a good level of chemistry. I really liked that they're both celebrities. I feel like the celebrity ex-normal person is a trope I adore and I love reading, but it is so nice to see them both be celebrities and both be on the same page and used to the fame and used to everything it comes with. And I actually made room for them to talk about how they are perceived differently, as they are both Latin celebrities, but also the fact that she is a female celebrity is treated a lot different, or in different ways than he is. So I liked all of their conversations about that. In terms of Latinx representation, she doesn't speak any Spanish and he speaks fluent Spanish, and she's lived most of her life in America and he's lived a lot of his life in Puerto Rico. You get to see kind of two sides of the coins in terms of that representation and how they talked about it together and overcame it, or not overcame it, but like connected to each other, even though they don't have the exact same backgrounds, but they share a community. I really liked all of that. This is one of the steamy romances where the steam is on the page, but I will have to say, in terms of levels of steam, it's not my highest level. It's kind of a middle level. So it was nice. They were good scenes, but they didn't rock my world, if that's how to say it. It's like a medium steamy level for readers who find that helpful to know. She's also got a big family, and it talks about like the joys and sometimes the struggles of having a big family who might not always understand what you're doing and pursuing in life. It was just, generally speaking, a really nice time. It came together well at the end and I was like, oh, this was good. I liked it. I read it in a day. Let me read the next one. Yeah, that's where everything went wrong. A lot like Adios was bad from the beginning. I should have DNF'd it, but I read it in a single day. So it's bad, but I finished it. And in this one, we're following a different cousin from that family, and she is a marketing person who was burned out while working in the marketing industry and decided to go freelance, and she started off a romance with Gabriel, who disappeared when he was 18 because he was feeling threatened by his parents' demands for his life. So that means they started a romance and he cut it off abruptly, disappeared from her life even though they were best friends, and she hasn't heard from him in several years. And then he reappears in her inbox because he runs a gym and he needs a marketing person to run it, as he opens a new gym in the area where she lives. So that is how they get back together. This romance was the most contrived romance that I have ever read. There was no need for a lot of the things that happened, and there were no motivations. There was no reason why the things that happened were happening. Why, when he comes to New York City, does he have to stay in her flat? She just keeps saying, you have to stay in my flat, you're not allowed to stay in a hotel. Why? Why not? You're saying that you don't want to get back to him, so why would you not put him somewhere else? I just don't understand why she kept demanding that. Even the way that they first got together when they were teenagers, she just says some random sexual thing out of the blue that it's just like, why would you say that to him? So then that kicks off their romance. Just so many things don't add up and don't make sense. Also, I don't feel like they had any chemistry. There was no romance between them. They get physical very, very fast, and that seems to just keep happening. And I just couldn't see the moment where they fell in love with each other. They just fell in love and I was like, what now? Really? Why? What? It didn't feel natural. I didn't feel any semblance of romance between them. As I said, it's very sexual between them. There's a lot more sex in this one than there is in the first book in the series, and the sex wasn't even good in this one. The first one, it was fine, and I was like, this is nice enough to read, but this one I just wasn't feeling the scenes at all, even though they had so much more sex. I guess because I didn't care about the characters enough. I think a lot of the tensions in this book, the tensions between their relationship and the tensions between his relationship with his parents, and why the conflict happened in the first place where he had to disappear, all of the tension could have been solved if everybody sat down and had a conversation. Like, the solution to every single problem that comes up in this book is for them to sit down and have a conversation, and it takes the whole book for him to sit down with the people he needs to sit down with and have conversations, and when he does, it's all cleared up just like that. And I'm not usually the one who complains about lack of communication, but in terms of representation, whew, I'm getting heated. There's Latin representation in this, but that is the only thing that's done well. There's also supposed to be bisexual representation, as they are both bisexual characters. They have like 3 sentences where they mention that they're bisexual, and that's it. That's all we see. So please don't be marketing this to people as bisexual representation, because it's really not. It's 3 sentences, and 3 sentences does not representation make. They also say that this is anxiety representation. She takes a pill twice in this book. That's again like 4 sentences about the fact that she has anxiety, so she takes a pill, and that's the beginning and end of the anxiety representation. That's not representation. That's saying you take anxiety meds. That again does not representation make. So I was really frustrated by the level of checkboxing that was happening in this, and oh, don't even get me started on checkboxing, because there was so much trope checkboxing. It's a second chance romance, check. That's the only one that felt valid, even though I wasn't convinced of romance on either occasions. But it's also got the one bed trope, check box. Didn't need to have that. They didn't need to be in the place that they were when this happened. It also has a bit of fake dating, check box. Nobody really cared. They didn't need it. The ruse is up very quickly and very soon. I felt like this was really trying hard to check all the tropes, and it just had to throw out sentences and words and occasions that didn't make sense, and rely so heavily on lack of communication because it wasn't well done. Like, it needed more plot development, it needed more planning. This just needed a lot of things that it didn't have. I was frustrated. Moving on, we're going to talk about something that is good, and that is In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. I read her short story collection last year, and so I wanted to just read her memoir ever since, and this is her memoir. She is a Latinx lesbian woman, and she is talking about her experience in an abusive relationship. And this is written in her poetic writing style. It's so lyrical. It uses gothic elements and tropes to kind of talk about her relationship, and it's called In the Dream House because she uses the metaphor of a haunted dream house to embody and show and depict her relationship. So it's got that really good metaphor carried all the way through. It's got the gothic writing, it's got the gothic pacing, and it's got her poetic writing style. Those are all ingredients to make a very good memoir already, but it's about such an important subject matter because this is about the kind of abusive relationship where there are no physical marks left. The abuse is done in terms of words, in terms of leaving her stranded in places, in terms of just abusing her mental health, and also putting her in bodily danger or situations where she's in bodily danger without inflicting the danger with your hands yourself. This book talks about how a lot of times that kind of abuse gets overlooked and it falls through the cracks of the law system. It's not signposted, it's not talked about enough, the abuse that can happen within a queer relationship, because many of the laws are attuned or written for straight relationships only. It's really important. It is done in a very emotional way, and it's written beautifully even though it's talking about such a difficult topic, and I like where it ended, how it ended on a bit of an uptick even though this book has been talking about such a hard subject. Really good. The Magic Fish by Trung Nguyen, and this is a really beautiful graphic novel, and it feels very slice of life, but it's also quite meaningful. It's talking about this young boy who is gay, and he doesn't know the words in Vietnamese to tell his mother that he is gay, and he's trying to tell his mother about it in different ways. And one of the ways in which him and his mother really bond with each other is through telling fairy tales, which this is essentially the storyline of the story. They read fairy tales together and they try and bond through the storytelling. It depicts a lot about how language can be both a barrier but also a bridge to be overcome. You get to see the mother's past and how she had to escape Vietnam for certain reasons. So I liked those flashbacks because it gave us a bit more building towards her character. But you also get to see him going to school, trying to come out to his friends, and some of the experiences that he has that are not so pleasant with how he learns that he's gay and how people react to it. The artwork in this is really stunning and detailed. I just loved the way hair was drawn, and it also does something that I really like, which is it has colour palettes for different sections. So if it's a fairy tale, it's usually done in the blue, and if it's present day storyline, it's in the red. And then I think, yes, you can see it here, if it's a flashback, it's in the yellow colour. So I liked how it used colour palettes. I think the art style was really kind of magical and fairy-esque, which suited the stories that they're telling each other. And in terms of the fairy tales, they are Vietnamese based ones more often than not, so you get to see kind of the overlaps between European fairy tales and the Vietnamese ones, but also how stories and fairy tales that are told to each other through mouth get changed and can adapt as they get passed through the generations. A really lovely graphic novel. A big book, an illustrated non-fiction book. I read Goddesses and Heroines by Jean Menzies, and it's illustrated by Kate Ponder. So this is a book that is talking about goddesses and heroines from across different international backgrounds and histories. It was really well done, really well researched. It's for kids, but you can read it as an adult as well. It's kind of one of those all ages books. So as you can see on this page, it discusses different characters from all around the world, tells you their pronunciation, which cultural heritage they come from, and a bit about them. And as well as that, you then get detailed stories about some of them, which is really, really nice. Just flicking through it briefly. They weren't all new to me, but I learned about a lot of goddesses and heroines that I hadn't heard of before, which is what you really want from a non-fiction illustrated book like this. I also liked that it delved into some of the stories, so you got a bit more of a fleshed out image of them. It talked about heroines which are human, but also heroines which are mythological creatures, and then goddesses from all around the world. I liked the international elements of it. I did think that sometimes it felt a little bit simplistic and it could have upped the complexity, even though it's for children. But yes, a very good time with this. Which moves me on to talking about Rebel Folklore by I.C. Sedgwick, and this one is illustrated by Melissa Jarram, and this as well is an illustrated non-fiction book. I was really, really impressed with this one. So it's talking about rebellious figures in folklore, whether they be women or men or mythological creatures, and this one was so international, and I appreciated how international it was. It's split into the continents, so first you see like Australian rebel figures, and then African rebel figures, and then different continents. So I really liked how it was divided that way, and I could just tell their research was really well done. Really, really well done, but also in a way that felt very inclusive. So she talks about how there are different reiterations of the same story, and she doesn't only just show us one of those iterations, but will show us 2 or 3, so we get the gist of how they differ from each other. But also, for example, when talking about the Native American stories, she said they're not all stories that are allowed to be written down because they're owned by the people, they're owned by the community, and these are stories that we do have permission to talk about, but of course there are stories that we don't. Or they say this is what the story was like before, but since this story has been told, colonialism has come into how it was passed down, and you can see the colonialist elements from these parts of the story. So you can just tell that that research was really well done and very detailed. I learned about figures that I knew already, but I also learned about, again, a lot of new ones that were new to me and that I want to look into and see if I can find stories around them. And the artwork in this was really just lovely and beautiful. I'm trying to show it to you. This is Anansi, as we all know, Anansi. So the artwork is really well done. It gives you a good image of what the creatures would look like or were described as, with a lot of symbolism around it relating to their story. I had such a good time with this, and it's one of those reference books that are going to sit on my shelf. When I read those Chinese mythology books or Japanese mythology books, I'm going to be able to refer to this to get more information on what it is based on. Another graphic novel that I read this month, I read quite a few of them, is Meesh the Bad Demon by Michelle Lamb. This is one of those middle grade, all ages kind of graphic novels, and in this one we follow Meesh. She's a demon, but she's not very good at being a demon. She likes fairies and rainbows and magic, and she's not very good at doing all the demonic things that she should do. But when a crisis comes across her land and she's the only one that could save the demons, she might have to team up with a pair of unlikely characters to save her home. I really liked this one. I thought it was really cute. It had really bright colourful artwork that had the fairy elements to it and the demon elements to it both. I liked that these friendships had to form that were a bit unexpected. It talked about prejudice between cultures. It also talked about like understanding and appreciating who you are, even though you might be a bit different to your family or the people around you. And it was just sweet. It was really, really sweet and entertaining and cute, and I can see how there could be sequels for this one. So I just had a really good time. The only thing I will say is that on the cover, this fairy is white, but on the inside, the fairy is actually clearly a person of colour. So I'm not sure why she was whitewashed on the cover. But other than that, really a cute story. I can recommend this one to children and parents, but also if you're an adult who just likes to read some cutesy graphic novels every now and again that are heartwarming and good vibes only, this could be one I would recommend you. I read a young adult book called How Far We've Come by Joyce Efia Harmer. So this one feels a bit like the young adult version of Kindred. We're following a girl who lives on a slavery plantation, and she stumbles across this white boy in the woods who doesn't talk like anyone that she knows, and he is actually from the future and has a diamond where she can escape from her horrible life and go to the future. But she doesn't know what to do there. She wants to go back and rescue the people that work on her plantation. Now, this was really a case of it's me, not you. I am still very oversaturated on slavery narratives, and I don't particularly love reading them. I was sent this one for review though, so I decided to give it a read any which way, and it was a good one. I can recommend it to teenagers, but it just wasn't one for me in particular because of the fact that I'm so oversaturated on slavery stories. What I liked about this is that it's written in patois, and I've never seen actually a young adult book that's written in patois, because our main character is from the past in Barbados and she speaks in patois, so it makes sense that the narrative is told in patois. And I just love that. I think it's unique. I think we should have a couple more young adult books like this for readers who are from that heritage and culture to be able to read, but also so that children can experience different types of language. I also really think it did a good job of handling talking about slavery. It can be really hard to do it for teenagers, where you don't want to water things down, you don't want to peel back or like take away from what really did happen on slavery plantations, but you also might want to be careful with how you're depicting it because you don't want to scare teenagers too much. And I liked the balance of how this one handled that. I think it was a realistic depiction of slavery. I think it was realistic for a teenager's eyes, and it's one that I would not hesitate to let young adults read as well. So I thought it handled the representation and also the language very well. As for the story, I was just okay about it. Like, I wasn't very connected to the main characters, but I didn't dislike them either. I just think sometimes it got a bit repetitive in terms of talking about how much we should let teenagers know. Should we be keeping them innocent? Is that beneficial to anyone? Should we just be telling them the truth of what's really happening? In terms of that story cycle, it got a little bit repetitive here and there, but it was still touching on themes and discussions that are important for teenagers to hear and consider, and for the parents who might read this alongside their teenagers to consider. So I kind of forgive it for that as well. It's just one of those books that I would recommend to young adults, and I think young adults are really going to appreciate reading, and I appreciate it being out there. It just wasn't necessarily the book for me. And last but not least, the last book I read in the month was The Storm Swimmer by Clare, Weze. And this again is a book where I think the problem is I'm not the audience for this. And I rarely say that with middle grade, but this really felt like a middle grade book that was written for its age audience, and I'm impressed by how well it did this. So in this one, we're following Ginika. She has to go and spend a time with her grandparents because her mother and father are in debt, and they're trying to solve that by working very intense hours to solve it. They can't look after her. So she goes to the beach, and in the water she discovers a sea person, a little sea boy, and this sea boy wants to experience the human world. So that's how our story goes. So what I like about this is that oftentimes when it comes to mermaids or sea creatures, it's really done in that mythological way that is recognizable to us as this is what we think mermaids are like. But this one was so rooted in science. I really liked that. Is so alien to us. He's so different, and I read the author's note and she did so much research into how a sea person might really be, and I loved it. I loved that we got such a scientifical based creature that we were following in this one. I also really loved that we don't go into his world. We learn about it through how they communicate, but we don't go into that world. It's about him coming into our world, and I often think with alien stories, a lot of it is us going into their world, is diving under the sea and getting to experience it with them, and I like that it was the opposite in this case. I also like that even the language wasn't translatable. Even the language was a barrier for them, and they had to learn how to like sign language and find ways to communicate around that. And I think that's an inquisitiveness that can be good for children to see on the page, to learn that not everyone will talk like them and not everyone will be able to learn at a speed that will enable a conversation very quickly. And you've got to find other ways of communicating with other people. You've got to understand and appreciate that different people have different quirks to you. I also, again, really like the fact that she is often really frustrated about the fact that her parents are not telling her enough, and she can understand that something very serious is happening, but because the parents don't communicate with her, she is imagining worse things. And I think often we belittle children's insights into things and we think they don't understand, but really they're understanding something, and it's only to our detriment that we don't communicate with them. Loved it. Loved seeing that. There's also friendships with other characters who are not necessarily the C person, and those friendships were quite complex. I like that they weren't very straightforward. There's a character who's in a wheelchair, but he's not a permanently disabled person. He's going through recovery from a surgery. I think it's also good to see that anyone could end up being a wheelchair user for a period of time. Anyone could end up in one of those disability groups. And so I liked that we got to see that representation to things. Ginika is also black, and she talks about that briefly in terms of some of the experiences she has with people around her. Really, really good. I think there's so much children can learn from reading this. But as an adult reading this, I was like, the plot of this is there's a C person and they go and have adventures in the real world. That is it. That's the story. And for me as an adult reader, I would need a whole load more, but for children readers, there's so much they can learn and take away from this book. It's again another one that I recommend, but wasn't necessarily for me. And there you have it. Those are all the books that I read in the month of September. Please let me know in the comment section down below, what is a book that you recommend with a caveat? So like, I recommend this book, but please let me know. I'd love to hear your answers to that. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more, and don't forget to hit that notification bell to be updated every time I have a new video. And you know what they say, onwards and upwards. Excelsior!